We're in the middle of a sermon series called, it's Journey Through the Book of Luke. It's called Just a Story. As in, is the book of Luke just a story, or is it by a real person about a real person? And so today we've got as far as Luke chapter 6, which some of you, at the end of it, some of you will know as the wise man who built his house on the rock. Now, I know this bit of scripture from a song that I was taught, I think, at junior school. So my quick question to you all this morning is, do you want me to read the verse to you, or do you want me to sing the verse to you? I thought this might be the way. Let's, I'll try not to trash everything. Is there some buttons I need to press under here, Paul, or is it just going to magically work? It should just magically work. Let's see. Hey, it's good. Wow, you haven't heard it yet. Now, I'll do it with this. The only thing is, if I'm going to sing this, if you know the song, you have to sing it with me. Is that fair? Okay. There it is. The wise man built his house upon the rock. The wise man built... Do you want to come and do the actions? Come and do the action trick. The wise man built his house upon the rock, and the rain came tumbling down. This is the chorus bit. The rain came down and the floods came up. The rain came down and the floods came up. The rain came down and the floods came up, and the house on the rock stood firm. Nice. There we go. Nice and firm. Second verse, you ready? The foolish man built his house upon the sand. The foolish man built his house upon the sand. The foolish man built his house upon the sand, and the rain came tumbling down. Chorus. The rain came down and the floods came up. The rain came down and the floods came up. The rain came down and the floods came up, and the house on the sand fell flat. There you go. Give Jill a massive round of applause. Thank you, Paul. If you're sat there bemused and you've never heard that before, that was a cultural experience for you. The cultural experience was actually of what it was like to grow up in the 70s and 80s. I learned that in junior school. It was like a thing. You were allowed to sing Christian songs in junior school. Who knew? So there you go. If you've never heard that before, I'm sorry, because this afternoon you'll be hearing that as an earworm. It will not leave you for the rest of the afternoon. See, Jaden thinks so as well. Now, there's a downside. There's a downside to this that song, in that it misses out the whole point of what Jesus was trying to teach. He basically said, the key bit right at the beginning is, everyone who comes to me and hears my words and puts them into practice will be like the wise man who built his house upon the rock. Make sense? So, now, if you've ever heard this taught about before, most people will teach from this bit, the bit about we need to follow the ways of Jesus. And I could do that this morning, but I've rewritten this sermon about 3 times just because I kept feeling like the Lord nudging me to do something slightly different, and perhaps tell a few more stories from me, from my life. So Jesus is a master storyteller. So he's in this story, he's got this thing of like the wise man and the rock, and then the foolish man and the sand. And at no point was any of you thinking, I want to be the foolish man here. The sand sounds great. The house flat, that all sounds good. It's not like you don't even have to ask the question. It's just there, isn't it? It's well presented. So, and Jesus does this throughout the book of Luke. He'll talk about something, and he's talking about multiple things, and you're trying to process all these things, and they mean different things to different people. If you're sat here and you're an architect, you're thinking, why is Duncan not talking about engineering this morning and the proper solid foundations? So the thing I felt like the Lord asked me to lean into this morning was the weathering the storms of life. We're shown this because Jesus is literally teaching us how to weather the storms of life. And the downside of this is I felt like I had to share some stories. My sister's here today with most of her family, and nephew and his family all the way from Texas, just in case, you know. Like, yeah, there you go, shout out. I had to apologize to my sister earlier in the week that I'd be telling some of the stories that I'm telling to you today. There's two storms that I've had to weather in my life, and the difference in which I treated them are the things that I want to talk about this morning. The first storm happened when I was about 15, but I've probably got to go back a year first. So let's go back to age 14. So Abby's like 3 years younger than me, so she was 11. We had a little brother at that point. He'd be like 1. But it was like life was relatively normal. We lived in a lovely 4-bed. Do you want me to use the other mic, Gav? Do you want me to use the other mic? Am I right? Okay. Tell me if I do, just wave and do a thing and I'll do the thing. Life was relatively normal. We lived in a lovely 4-bedroom house on the edge of Burnley, so we weren't in the awful bit. It was like, it backed onto some woodland and all sorts. And then, fast forward a year, and our littlest sister had been born, so she was like, literally, when I was 15, she was born. And 3 months after that, I might struggle with this sermon, by the way. 3 months after that, my dad had a massive breakdown. And so, any storms of life often happen like a slow-motion car crash. You can see it happening, but there's very little. Once you've lost control of the steering wheel, there's very little you can do to find a new path to stop the crash happening. So, Dad was in and out of hospital for most of that year. So that meant he wasn't able to run his business, which the family business, it wasn't a very big one, so he didn't have many people working for him. So we literally didn't have any income then, and actually the business failed. And it was worse than that because Dad blamed Mum for all this. And so their marriage failed. And so you could see the car crash happening, different things bouncing off and different things breaking. And so the moment it caught me, this is really ironic, but the moment it caught me, I ended up at sixth form, and for the first time in my life, I got free school meals. And it was just one of those moments where you go, oh yeah, life's changed. It wasn't all bad though, because my friend Joseph actually had a similar experience in his home life. And so we went with our free school meal vouchers together and went to the canteen, rather like it is here, and said, can we have what can we have for our vouchers today? So it was life was a little bit different. I'm going to fast forward now to 2020, a storm in life that most of us had to deal with. We called it COVID-19 or lockdown or something of that nature. And so we ran a business at the time, and the church was probably like 2 years old, something like that, nearly 2 years old. And I remember saying to Lorna at the time, this was March when we first went into lockdown, everything will be all right with the business as long as we're back up and running again by the 1st of June. And you're laughing because you know that we did not get back up and running again by the 1st of June. And admittedly, then there was a furlough scheme and all sorts. And I remember another conversation with Lorna in October, which was coming towards the end of the furlough scheme. We said, if we keep employing everybody and there's no work comes in, the business will collapse by Christmas. And so we had some really hard conversations and really hard things to work through. So some of these stories I'm going to tell you today, some of the lessons, the life lessons I learned, are the life lessons that I learned in that 35-year gap, less than that, 30 year, I can't do the maths, in the gap between storm 1 and storm 2. And Jesus is a master storyteller in that you'll see this throughout the rest of the Gospel of Luke. He'll do the two things, but he'll also tie other things together. So this, to some degree, there's a financial analogy in this, in that we all want a house that's warm and dry above our heads, and we don't want it to ever go. So I'm going to try and keep on. These are life lessons that I learned from that moment age 15 to now. And I'm going to explain why I'm teaching them after I've taught them. So you just have to hold with me. So the first financial life lesson I learned was when I went to university. I was at 18, and I got there, and then, I'm really sorry, for those of you who are younger than me, I got a grant, if you remember what those things were. And so the government gave me some money for the term, and that was very kind of them. And I didn't have to even pay it back. It was amazing. If you're younger than me, you'd be like, I can't believe that. So I realized within about the first week that actually, though nobody had explained this to me, I was actually financially independent. I didn't know what financial independence looked like. I'd never run a budget before. I'd never really paid for anything before, to be fair. And so actually, it got worse now, because I worked out that I had some money, but then I had to pay off the rent, and I had to pay off all the bills, and I still had to eat, and I'd worked out how much a weekly shopping was, and that wasn't as cheap as I thought it was going to be. And it was even worse than that, because I went to church. I went to church, a new church for me, Southwest London Vineyard, up in Putney. It was lovely. And there was a band, and there was a PA, and we'd come from when we went to church with Mum, it was a little Methodist church in Burnley, and like, if there was a band, it was us, because we were the musical family. And there wasn't really a PA system. We just had whatever amps we could muscle together and whatever else. So I was like, this is amazing. It was a little bit overwhelming to start with. And then probably on like the second or third week, the person that did notice us, rather like Emma did today, they said, oh, no, if you're new around here, you'd like to tithe to this church, you'll find all the details on the back of the notice sheet. And, showed up the notice sheet, and there was things on the back. And I was like, what is that? So I remember Pete, he's my friend, who was my landlord, he drove me home. And I was like, Pete, what's tithing? I genuinely no idea. We used to put £1 a week into the offering, like a velvet basket thing that's what they did. And I thought that was quite good, to be fair. And so Pete said, every time I get paid, every time my salary comes into my bank, I take 10% of it, and then it goes back out on a standing order a couple of days later, just so that they match up. And then that goes to the church, and it pays for all the things you've seen, and all the ministry to the poor, and all the bits and bobs that we do as a church. And I was like, oh, that sounds all right. And he said, for me, it's a way personally that I can, I recognize that God has given me these things, and so I'm giving him a portion back. And so this is my way of just saying, this isn't mine, it's somebody else's, so I'll pass on my 10%. And he said, it's a heart issue. It's part of my worship. And I was like, okay. I wasn't convinced, because I'd done the maths, and I was like, there's not much left in my grant, so I wasn't quite sure how it was going to work. So being a good young Christian boy, I had a study Bible. So that Sunday afternoon, I went to the back, and there's a concordance, and I looked through things on tithing and money and generosity. And just to help me do this, I put a tape on. Does anyone know what a tape was? It was like a forerunner to Spotify, but it was physical. Anyway, so I put a tape on of a Christian band that I think they were like one of the biggest Christian bands at the time, at least in this country, a band called Iona. So press play on my little thing. It wasn't little in those days. It was big speakers and tower thing about this big, and sometimes it even worked without chewing the tape up. It was amazing. So I'm listening to Iona, and I'm flicking through the Bible, trying to learn about tithing, and there was a moment there where I was like, I'm still not convinced. And then this song came on that Iona used to sing, which is a quote directly from the Gospel of Luke. Where your treasure is, there is your heart. And I was like, oh, okay. So you remember what Chrissy was saying last week? Just these little things, these little pennies kept dropping, these little moments you're like, this might be from the Lord. I still wasn't entirely convinced, so I wrote to Mum. And I said, Mum, I think I might need to start tithing. And she said, given that at this point, I knew I was going to struggle with this. At this point, Mum's a single mum, 4 kids. I think if she was working, she was only working part-time. And she said, yeah, I think I need to do the same. And so then I had to work through, how am I going to work? How am I going to make these sums work? Because they just don't. And so for the first time in my life, I had to learn how to budget. Nobody ever told me how to do it. I had to just work out how to budget. So I did. And the only way I can make the sums actually work was to get an evening job, which is, again, what I did. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had the money to get the train fare back for Christmas. So there you go. Whenever we're looking at, I'll be fine. I've got a thing in my pocket, honestly. Yeah. I'm sorry putting you through this. That foundation has been really good for us for the rest of our lives. When we first got married, we put our finances together, and we decided that we were going to give 15% of our money, not 10%. Tithing's around. If you flick through your concordance, you'll find tithe and 10 look like similar words in the Hebrew and blah, 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 blah. But we've always put that in place, and we've always then had to budget. You can't tithe unless you budget. Most people, unless you're unfeasibly naturally good at your money, you can't tithe unless you end up budgeting. So we've always had to budget, and every storm in life, we've had to do a new budget. Mostly we do a budget, and then it just runs. And then something goes up or down, and then you have to do a new budget, and you're like, okay, let's just work this out again. I should say, as a church, we've run the CAP money course quite a few times now, which is a brilliant way. If you've never budgeted before, the CAP money course, the Christians Against Poverty money course, is a great way of learning how to budget. And if you probably can't see unless your eyesight's phenomenally good, but at the bottom there, if you go onto our website, epsomvineyard.org / and just put in CAP, C-A-P, you'll get through to the page which has all the information on this. And then there's an email address, cap@epsomvineyard.org. If you are interested this morning, you're thinking, I might need to do a budget at some point. If you're interested, just send a quick email to cap@epsomvineyard.org that just says, I'm interested. Is that all right? Next one. Okay. So as you get into the rest of the Gospel of Luke, and chapter 16 specifically, there's a whole story, but the punchline, Jesus' punchline is, you can't serve both God and money. Simple one, right? So the budget served me really well for the first 2 years of being a student. Then in the third year, my bank sent me a nice little letter that said you can have £1,000 at 0% on a credit card. I was like, that's brilliant. Because what I really needed was £1,000 to buy the computer that I did my dissertation on, and I did a music technology course. So I wrote and recorded some music, blah, blah, blah. And so the £1,000 went to this workstation. I got the free credit card money. And it didn't necessarily, I kind of knew that at some point I'd have to pay back with interest. But you don't find that out until you stop being a student, and then you get a letter through which says, this is what it's going to cost. So nowadays, if you've got any money on credit cards, the average you will be paying back on that is 35%. So for my £1,000, over the course of a year, I'd have had to, if I didn't pay it off, I'd have owed an extra 350 quid. And so that was quite a shock to me, but I was like, okay, I need to do something with this. So when I got my first job, I think it probably took me 2 or 3 months of saving hard to pay off the credit card debt, because I didn't want to pay an extra 350 quid. So that principle, this isn't in the Gospel of Luke. These are just some of the things that we did that really helped us across our lives. And they're great, solid foundations that will lead you to financial peace. I paid off that credit card, and we've still got a credit card, but we paid it off every month since then. I've never paid any interest on the credit card. We've never paid it. The serving money bit, I didn't want to serve the credit card companies by my money coming in and then going out to them. So I was like, right, I need to get this under control. And we've done that throughout the whole of our lives. We're quite conservative on many levels, in that we've never bought a car on credit. We always save up and then buy it and then run it down till it stops working or something, you know. But we use that, and we use that in our business as well. We only ever bought things that once we'd saved some money up in the business. It's served us well. It's allowed us to serve the Lord well. Then the third lesson we had to learn was a joint lesson when we first got married. We worked out that we needed a rainy day pot. Most of you, if you've ever manage your finances will have some form of rainy day pot. Some of you are nodding. For us, we worked out that we needed about £1,000 as our rainy day pot because we thought, if the boiler breaks, we still want to be clean tomorrow with warm water. Or if the car fails its MOT, actually, we use it to get to work at the time. So we really do need the car. So about £1,000, that's where we started. That was in 97 when we got married. 2020, when by the time we'd got to COVID, to lockdown, we'd saved up for a stormy day. And so we were small business owners at the time, and the accountant for our small business, he would say to us, you probably need somewhere between 3 and 6 months worth of expenditure at any given time, just set aside, saved, so that if the wind blows and the storm, the floods come up, then you'll be all right. So we did that in our business, and we also did that in our personal finances too. And I'm really, really glad, because when COVID hit, our business we lost 85% of our turnover over that first year. It was quite a financial shock. But because we had a stormy day fund personally and a stormy day fund in the business, neither went wrong. So fortunately, I don't know if I can say this, but fortunately I didn't have a breakdown, so I didn't have anything to blame Lorna for, so we've still got a marriage. There was the house was never at risk. We used our stormy day fund in the end to pay off some of our mortgage. We had, just the way it had worked, we had an expensive bit in the mortgage and a bit that we'd had forever that we managed to port to our new house. So we paid off the expensive bit because we worked out that if I paid that off, then what we had left in the stormy day fund would last longer. Just maths. But at least we had a stormy day fund to do that with, and it just kind of worked. So some of you in the room are older than me, and you've done this, and you know this. Some of you in the room, you've not even got to the point of how this works. And if that is you, I'm really glad that I can share some of our lessons. These are relatively basic lessons on some levels. Most of, why am I telling you this? Why am I telling you this? If we get our foundations good, if we get, back to the storms. The storms in life often have multiple components. So you might have emotional or mental components on this side, and almost always you will have some financial components to that storm. Almost always. If you want help with the emotional side, you probably need to find yourself in a life group. You need a network of friends who will support you, love you, pray for you, make you a meal if you need a meal. Whatever it is, you just need some people to help you connect. And so Lorna talked about that a couple of weeks ago in terms of finding yourself a life group, people that you can look after and they can look after you when the winds blow and the storms come. The financial things are mostly quite pragmatic. Most of us can work them once you've worked out the life lessons. And actually, for me, most of the financial lessons I learnt in life came in a church setting or came from friends in a church setting. If I'd have taken financial advice from the people I worked with across the years, I'd still have loads of credit cards. All my cars would have been on finance and would be a lot nicer than the one I've got in the car park. But, okay, the reason for talking about this morning, we start in Luke 6. As you get to about Luke 12, I'm coming on to this next week. I've not got enough time to finish it today, but Luke 12, we start to get this concept. There's loads of concepts from Jesus about how we deal with our money. One of the concepts around Luke 12 is this idea of financial peace. You follow the ways of Jesus, you will find yourself in financial peace. More about that next week. And why? What's the point of that? The point, I've got 2 points. What does this mean for us today? And why ultimately did I teach on this today? When the storms come, and you find yourself in a life group, and you find yourself surrounded by people who've advised you, let me step back one more. If I talk about this on a Sunday morning, mostly our life groups talk about what we talked about on a Sunday morning. So over the course of this next week, if you're in a life group, you will have the opportunity to talk to your friends in your life group about finances. Because we're here living in Britain, and we don't talk about money very much. It's just like a thing. We don't talk about sex, we don't talk about money. Like, so next week we're going to talk about, no, we're not. We're all right. I'm going to talk about money a little bit more, but for good reason. It all develops across the Gospel of Luke. Hopefully, even in just talking about some of these things, we get to share some of our storms of life together. Most of us will have been through some storms, and most of them will have had some emotional sides and some financial sides. This slide is one I borrowed from a month ago when we talked about our vision for this year, our vision really for our church, which is that you will know that you are loved. You are all loved. And one of the practical, I've shared this today, that's right, Jaden, I've shared this today because I want you to know that you are all loved. We care about you to the point where we want to share some of our difficult things, the things that make us a little bit vulnerable along the way, because I want us to have those conversations around so there's some of you in the room, in any life group, you will find there is probably someone who has some financial wisdom that is beyond your financial wisdom. And it may be that, that you're the most wise person in the life group, but you'd probably still find someone else in that life group who's got some input, some thought as to how life could be better. So I want us all to be equipped to weather the storms of life together. The storms of life are often the things that throw us off course. When it comes to our questions of faith, belief, who we are, our relationships, the things that often throw us off course are the storms of life. And if we're equipped together as a church, if we know we are loved together, we will face the storms of life to better with the help of Jesus. Band, would you like to come up? Would you like to stand? I'm going to pray. And we're just going to worship a little bit more. And as we're worshiping, this is a great opportunity for you to think through what's the wisdom that you can share with other people, and how can you share it? Or what's the wisdom that you need that would help you through the next storm that blows, when the wind comes, when the rain falls? So Lord, thank you. Lord, thank you that we are all here, whatever the storms of life have been. Oh Lord, if there's nothing else in the teaching today, it's the recognition that there will probably be more storms in life, and most of them we can't see coming, but they just arrive, and it's like a slow motion car crash that you just can't quite keep hold of. But Lord, I pray you will help us as a church, as your people, to learn to steward well everything that you've given us, and to look after our friends, our families, our brothers and sisters. We just pray all this in Jesus' name.